Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tally Book Troubleshooting. I'm your host, Keith Stelter, trying to bring a little bit of positive PR and some education along the way for our great oil and gas industry. Coming to you live from one of my most favorite places now that I've been here a little while, the Permian Basin, Odessa, Texas, where I live for the last about 4 years now. It's getting to be a little bit longer every day, I guess. That's what happens. We moved here originally to be in the oil industry with wireline. Then COVID hit, and then moved to the midstream and construction. So today's episode brought to you by 413 Mechanical for all your construction needs. 413 Mechanical. We do manufacturing, header skids, lateral skids, spools, platforms, stairs. We do concrete work, grout, earthwork, piping, roustabouts, hydrovacing, a little bit of pipeline work you need. We're your guys. Give us a call. Be happy to help you out. We just opened up our shop here in South Odessa, paint booth, and things kind of came together pretty quickly here. I just joined the group here in January as their vice president of sales and marketing. Pretty proud moment for myself. Pretty excited to see what we can do. Originally, I went to school for civil engineering, if you can think about that. 20 years I was in wireline, so it's amazing to come back. Comments, bring them in, sir. Let me know where you're watching from. Justin, thank you for tuning in, sir. Appreciate your comments. Go Oilers, go! If you see them in the background, let me know where you're watching from, and if you got any questions on what the short course is, that's what we're going to be talking about today. I got the great Scott Emerson, great guy. If you've never met Scott, he is one of those bigger than life folks in the industry, a great representative, great volunteer. Speaking of volunteers, I was volunteering with Scott and a bunch of others at the API golf tournament this weekend here in the Permian Basin golf tournament. Man, I'll just take a moment and have a drink because it was a clay shoot, if you can be honest. It went well. The API raises money for scholarships for people, students in the industry, students in the Permian Basin going on, continuing their education. Met a few of those students at the shoot, and it was great. Ooh, Lloydminster. Yes, sir. Thank you. Frozen north of San Juan County, New Mexico. JC, sir, we're going to be talking about schools. You were actually the first school I ever got invited to speak at and broadcast from, so thank you for tuning in. Great Farmington, New Mexico. I thought it was beautiful up there, by the way. My wife, as always, beautiful, supportive. I'm so blessed. I have everything. I don't really have, there's nothing I can really complain about in life. Maybe I'm not tall enough. Is that a complaint? I don't know. Moving right along. Last week, thank you for everybody who tuned in to our live stream talking about 6 months for the Sky High event where we cut our hair. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, please do. Sky High for Kids raises money for cancer and among other, needs for, sick kids. And we had a blast talking about, cutting our hair, raising money, the event itself, the organization. Check it out. And, you're here to learn about the Southwestern Petroleum Short Course, focusing on artificial lift. It's coming up in April. I'm not an expert on it, but I'm going to be because I'm going to be broadcasting from there with the invite of a really cool guy. I'm going to bring him on the screen. Hopefully he's ready. I told him he can invite as many people to watch the show as possible. Let's see if he's ready to go. Mr. Scott Emerson, thank you for joining me this morning on Tally Book Troubleshooting. How's it going this morning?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, Keith.
So for the folks out there that don't know you, introduce yourself, give them the little, the 411, and let's go from there.
I'm Scott Emerson. I am Vice President of Sales and Marketing at SuperRod, a fiberglass rod company out of Big Spring, Texas. We make a fiberglass rod and send it all over the world.
Perfect. And you're going to be having a booth, and you've invited me to be at this Southwestern Petroleum Short Course. Can you tell the folks a little bit more about, what it is, who should attend, and who's already, planning to be there?
Well, the 2 day short course is the Southwestern Symposium, I think, and the chair this year is Anthony Allison from Oxy. Rhonda Brewer from Texas Tech University is the person who puts it all on, gathers everything up, gets it together. There is a committee of oilfield folks that have been doing this for years and years. For me and our company, it's the best bang for your buck in the basin. If you want to be in front of the production side of the Permian Basin, the Delaware Basin, even the Williston and the Eagleford, this is the place to be. They do a couple of days of continuing education for petroleum engineers, and then on Wednesday and half a day Thursday, white papers are presented for people that have come up with new products or new applications of products, and you can attend those papers. There's also, in between the papers, they take breaks, and there's a little mini oil show. And Keith, that's where we'll be set up, and you'll be able to interview the people that are doing, that have presented papers, or like you and I talked about, maybe we can get a conversation going between rod lift versus other forms of artificial lift, or maybe even fiberglass rods versus steel rods.
I think that'd be very, very interesting out there. You already have a question coming in. I know you distribute your rods to Canada, correct?
Yes. We have a
he works for, I believe, CNRL, and he asking, what size of rods do you carry?
Well, our distributor in Canada is Penta, and they are an engineering firm, and we make an 1.25 inch and a 1 inch rod, both a regular rod, which is good to 180 degrees, and a high temp rod, which is good to about 240.
Normally, we're not all about sales and stuff here of the products, but man, you can't turn that down when that comes in, right? That's pretty dang cool.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Heck yeah, for sure. JD calling in, 0 reasons to complain. Someone watch if they're not connected to you. Yes, they can. So, JD, if you're connected to them, you can invite them to this. You can copy the link in just your browser, email it to them. It's also featured on YouTube. You can search Tyler Book Troubleshooting on YouTube, and anybody can watch it on there. Nobody ever does, but I put it out there just so in case my dad ever decides he wants to watch one of my episodes, he can find it on there. And Janie, yes, you are right. I have 0 reasons to complain. I live a pretty blessed life. There's everything is going great. So the course is up in Lubbock, correct?
Yes, sir. It is.
What are the dates again?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I don't have the little folder.
I believe it's April 17th. Is that the first day or the 17th, 18th, and 19th, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
And so it's 2 days of courses, which is a lot of speaking, and then the actual oil show is 1 day, or is it all 3 days as oil show and speaking?
It's a day and a half. So the actually, we call it the 2 day short course. It's a 4 day short course. The Monday and Tuesday are continuing education. Wednesday is a full day of oil show and white papers. Thursday is a half a day of oil show and white papers, and we break down around noon on Thursday.
Perfect. Sounds like a great opportunity to learn about artificial lift. So I imagine a lot of production engineers attend this for their continuing education. You mentioned Oxy was one of the main guys speakers. ConocoPhillips, I imagine, Diamondback, are these the types of companies that kind of come and attend and learn more about these products?
Yes, I've seen people from Continental Resources come from the Williston Basin. Devon comes from Oklahoma City. People come from everywhere. The Eagleford, it is a very well attended event. If you have a service that's your market, I suggest you call Rhonda today and see if there's any booth space left, and get in if you can.
Justin, so we're trying to play around with the idea of having a live stream where people can just kind of call it or comment in just like you did, of educating more on rods or artificial lift. So you're watching, Justin, what would be more beneficial to you, comparing the difference in rods, steel rod, co-rod, fiberglass rod, or comparing the different artificial lift techniques? Scott, you're more of an expert than I am. So there's gas lift, there's rod lift, there's ESPs,
jet pump.
right?
There are quite a few ways. Back when I started in the oil field, it was called the production side, Keith, and rod pumping. They either flowed, flumped, or you rod pumped them. And flumping was just agitating around the seat and nipple to help facilitate the well to flow. Never dreamed of putting a electric submergible pump down hole because of the electric cost, and from 7,000 or 8,000 foot deep, that's upwards of can be $10,000-$20,000 a month electric bill. Rod pumping is by far the cheapest form of artificial lift, and that's the new technology, or the new terminology is, instead of the production side, we're now the artificial lift side. So
in another life, I was actually a company man on location, running ESPs downhole for a company up in the oil sands up in northern Alberta around Fort McMurray. So I am a little bit familiar with the ESPs, but not so much rod lift or any of the others. So no, pretty cool stuff. If you throw your comments out there, I'd love to hear the feedback on whether we should have, if we're going to have a discussion. I've had different discussions on refineries and, different compressor information for, the midstream sections. I've never done anything on artificial lift, and this show's kind of about a little bit of learning. So tell me what you think would be. Is it better to compare rods? Why we have different types of rods or different types of lift? Or maybe that's two different shows, that we could do at once, right? You never know, right, Scott?
Yeah.
I bet you'd be up for doing either one, wouldn't you?
Keith, you never really know what the 2-day short course, like last year, it was kind of the war of the gas separators. There were 3 or 4 different gas separators, and that was the big thing. So you never really know till you get there what it's going to be, or you look at a list of the white papers that's going to be presented. You can kind of get a feel of what the aura is going to be. I've tried to guess it every year, and I'm always wrong with what ends up being the topic of discussion. So I like the way we have you set up. SuperRod has a 20-foot booth, and we always give away our little walking sticks and all of our anti-government stickers and our politically incorrect stickers, I guess, rather than anti-government.
The oil and gas worker president sure enjoys your point of view as well. So well said.
Well, we make a great hard hat sticker, and we try to keep them different. And so this year we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take that 20-foot booth. I'm going to give you 10 feet of it, and I'm going to give James Durbin, the oil field photographer, the other 10 feet of it. And we're going to actually sponsor headshots. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see a nearly 15-year-old picture of me when I was skinny and a whole lot less gray. And it's time for me to update that. So that's the reason I really invited James Durbin to set up in our booth and take headshots for people's social media.
Ooh, we have a question here before we wrap things up. She is your sister, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to say? J.D. Stelson is your sister. You're not her brother. Is that correct? Man, I'm probably going to pay for that one.
Y'all walk up to Janie and say,
yes, the phone rang.
Brother. Excuse me?
The phone's ringing, right?
Yeah, I turned it off. My bad.
Would a normal Permian Basin vertical flow? If so, how long before you'd have to resort to artificial lift?
Well, in the past, it just depended on how good a well you made. Think of the vertical; they're not running sideways through the pay zone, so you're just perforating into the pay zone. Sometimes wells would flow a year or more before we started flumping them or pumping them to facilitate the flow, and then, of course, we would go ahead and rod them up.
Perfect. Justin, great explanation of different lifts. I've used ESPs in the past. Expensive. No power or cable get damaged. Multiple downtime. Rig job again is very expensive. Yes, sir. And you have to have pretty good experienced crews to run those lines down. Like when they need to know what they're doing. They can't just be in a hurry and run that, because one nick, you lose your ground or something and you're toast. So that was my experience running them.
And you will see different banding specialists at the short course too.
Perfect. Wow. We have another. There must be more than one person watching. My wife. She must have got the word out. Can you speak with increased possible depths we can now produce from using fiberglass sucker rods due to glass stretching? That makes sense to you?
It makes perfect sense to me. So what Jeff is asking about there is how can we produce as much as we can with steel, and we call it over travel. It used to be called harmonics, and it's all about getting the stretch of the fiberglass rods in synchronization with a pumping unit to create the longest possible downhole stroke. With the new laterals and horizontals that are being drilled, lots of companies pump from the kickoff zone, or if it's a toe up situation, they'll pump right there in the vertical from that sump or the toe up kickoff point. There's lots of different variables on what it's called. I like to call it a window. There's a window there for me to set a pump. Today with the deviated wells and as fast as they're drilling them, we have to deal with all of that in rod pumping. You don't really have to deal with that in other forms of artificial lift, but in rod pumping you do. Jeff was asking about, could we pump deeper now because of using fiberglass rods? So we like to use half of the string, maybe a little more, 60% would be fiberglass, the rest would be steel underneath it. And so you can use a smaller pumping unit and not overload the gearbox. If you had an all steel string with all of that weight, then you're going to, your gearbox can be overloaded, your pumping unit can be overloaded, your rod string itself can be overloaded before you even pump a stroke. So fiberglass has really made great strides in allowing us to produce deeper with smaller surface units.
Well, now I got to ask. I didn't know that you would mix the two, but that's pretty cool to know. Why wouldn't, now my own curiosity, why wouldn't you just run fiberglass the whole way down?
Well, so fiberglass has an elasticity modulus that is different than steel rods. Where a steel rod stretches, it never goes back to its original length. And a fiberglass rod continually stretches and reverts back to its original length. We need weight on the bottom of our string to be able to provide that stretch. So if you were to take a paper clip, here's,
it's just like drilling. Then you need drill collars for your weight. Okay, that makes sense.
And the drill collars were to keep you straight, and the steel rods beneath us are to keep us in tension.
Perfect. Janie, knocking it out of the park again. How has artificial lift changed from the transition to horizontal wells?
It is severely changed. We were primarily a vertical company. When SuperRod started as Final Rod back in 2012, everything was vertical. There might have been 3 or 4 horizontals a year in the whole, not the Permian Basin, but all of it, in every basin. And then it quickly changed. And those 3 years, which I want to say were 2014, 15, and 16, those 3 years were where we switched to all horizontal. That was a hard time for rod companies because it takes about 3 years before you rod up a horizontal. You're going to flow like crazy, and then you're going to ESP because you put such a big frac. You're trying to get all that water back and get to the pay or the oil as soon as possible, and then gas lift. And so when gas lift first started, it was about a 6-month run, and they have stretched that to a year, 18 months, 24 months. There are some wells that will never come off gas lift, and there's no moving parts there. That is a totally scientific form of artificial lift, and it's pretty neat. But it's the bane of a rod guy's existence. We would like to see gas lift go back to being 6 months. We know we're not ever going to get that, but we know sooner or later every oil well is going to go to rod lift.
Justin, what's the price difference between fiberglass steel rods? How often do fiberglass rods need to be replaced? Man, this wasn't intended to be a big info session on rods and stuff, but man, the questions come in, you got to answer, right?
I can do my sales pitch. So used to, fiberglass rods were 2 and 3 times as expensive as steel, but because steel prices have come up and fiberglass has essentially stayed the same, we're neck and neck. A 1-inch steel rod and a 1-inch fiberglass rods are the same. What was the second part of his question, Keith?
How often they need to be replaced? Fiberglass.
Usually, if the well is designed correctly using any of the rod string predictive programs, you're going to replace the steel rods 2 to 3 times underneath our glass before you have to replace SuperRod. I can't say anything about my competition, how long they last, but we designed for the life of the oil well. We don't ever want you to have to replace those rods. Of course, the oil field gets in the way sometimes. Communication from other wells, paraffin, deviations, stuff like that can wear on a fiberglass rod or put you in a bind. Good news is with SuperRod, we can back them off just like we do steel rods. Not any other fiberglass rod purports to be able to do that like we can.
Man, that's pretty cool. Well, it sounds like we got to maybe set something up a little bit better, get a couple live sessions going where we can get some of these people who can't make it to the show, set up some experts that are all going to be in the same place anyway. Man, it's a really good little session here, man. Thank you for tuning in. Now, you had one little story. It is Tally Book Troubleshooting. We're both sales and marketing. You had, for those who don't know, the SuperRod logo used to kind of, at one point, it would look like a Superman symbol, correct?
Well, and it still does to some extent, but we were Final Rod, and we changed our name to SuperRod, and I used the Superman logo with an S and an R, and I think that would have been fine had we not tried to trademark it, because DC Comics has a rift of lawyers sitting at the trademark office, and we received a nice letter, and it actually had like 100 lawyers' names down the side in columns of each. And it was a cease and desist letter from DC Comics. They wanted us to not use, they actually have an S trademark, but they also have an S and an A, S and a B, a S and a C, a S and a D, all of it, the whole alphabet trademark. Wouldn't surprise me if they had numerals too. So we switched to this. We still use the Superman shield, but DC Comics basically approved this. So my favorite saying in the oil field is I got sued by Superman. So we got sued by Superman.
Do you have the letter still?
We're going to get sued. We got a cease and desist letter from DC Comics. Now, the neat part about this is about 3 weeks after they approved this logo, Universal Studios sued DC Comics and took the rights of Superman away from DC Comics. So we could have just waited. Maybe we would have been all right with our second logo. But that's actually how we got in the sign business. You know that we make signs for the charity events, Keith, and that's where it came from. The third time we rebranded, we went from Final Rod to SuperRod with an S and an R, and then SuperRod. And the third time I walked into Russ Rutledge, our owner, and I said, Russ, I think we could have bought a whole fast signs for what we spent. And he kind of laughed at me and said, prove it. So I went and got the prices of everything inside of a sign company and bought the equipment. And then we hired Miss Dana James to run it all. So that's how we are able to make we make signage for the Southwest Petroleum Short Course. We make signage for the API tournament that you and I both volunteered at last Friday. Any charitable event in the Permian Basin or the Delaware Basin, New Mexico, Oklahoma, down in the Eagleford around Austin and San Antonio, we've done signage for events all over the country. And it turned out to be a real neat little marketing tool.
Perfect. And as you know, 413 just came up with a new logo. So I might be hitting you up to see if I can get some signs done for 413.
Well, I bet we don't really use it as a revenue stream, but I always help my friends out, Keith. And we will have your logo along with SuperRod's logo as a backdrop behind you at the short course.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott, for coming on and doing this. It's kind of turned into a nice little info session on rods. And man, we got to get, I bet there's all kinds of different guys with their, it's a lot bigger industry than I, got exposure to in my career. So love learning about it and appreciate you coming on and look forward to the course. Everybody out there, April 17th, 18th, and 19th, Lubbock, Texas, from Texas Tech, right? And the Southwest Petroleum Short Course, artificial lift.
Exactly right.
And until next time, that's how you troubleshoot. Let's see. And